Cradle, Dogs of Fount, Chapter 35, Part 2. The truck that passed her earlier was sitting in the middle of the small complex that was the bay. The catwalk's path was actually a square shape, suspended over the inner bay. There were stairways to gain access to the catwalk at all four corners, and she counted 3 normal-sized doors that led to some point in the interior, and of course the large dock had a wide opening to the interior where they brought in goods. In addition to the 2 guards she spotted at first, there were 2 more, armed and pacing the general area on the ground level. There were also 2 laborers moving pallets near the truck. She guessed one of them was the driver of the truck. They were easy to spot because of the white polos they wore. She wasn't sure how she was going to get in without the use of too much noise. If she somehow could use her scope on the SMG to headshot them all, she wouldn't be able to reach their bodies in time to hide them from the cameras. Also, the temperature drop in their bodies may set off some sort of alarm. She sat at the base of the tree behind the cover of the trunk and tried to think of something. The issue was the cameras. She could take out the men easily in seconds, but she only saw those 2 cameras, and that would make it easier to avoid being seen by the interior surveillance personnel. She knew the way in, but this way would take a good chunk of time out of going about the interior without any unwanted attention. She let the options come to her, but none of the alternatives would give her a chance of placing the beacon inside without sacrificing her life. So, she decided to stick with the first plan and took a long draught from her canteen and screwed back on the black cap without consciously being aware of it. She took out her screen and entered the military electronic ops app and selected the frequency assault menu. She set the audio assault lever to the level of 7.5 out of 10. She took her SMG out of her back holster and attached the screen to the side rail with the beam port facing the same way as the muzzle. She zoomed in with the scope and found the PA box on the ground level by the truck dock and fired the audio assault square in the middle of it. She saw the red light of her screen glowing for 10 seconds, and then it turned into the green, denoting that the signal was transmitting now. After another 20 seconds, Hawk saw that everyone in the base started to stagger, and they all dropped to the floor one by one. She charged the mech legs and timed the camera's motions perfectly. She sprinted at about 50 miles per hour towards the bay and entered just as both of the cameras were pointing away from the center in opposite directions of their sweep. She made it to the normal-sized door at the back of the bay and yanked it open and stopped inside. She had no time to think. It was a narrow hallway with shell-painted walls and nothing else, but presently there was a camera at the end of the hallway pointing down what she assumed was another hallway that branched left off of this one. So she sprinted all the way until she was under it so it wouldn't detect her. She'd made it, but was troubled by what she saw that the camera was pointing at. It was the open vista of the actual part of the city in the mountain. She was right beside the waterfall that Nathaniel Lent and Heather the Fountain Broad had entered in through that time last year. The camera was turning, and that was her only opening now, so she took off for the nearest cover, and that was a palm tree trunk near the pool of water by the waterfall. Then just as quickly she shot to the road by the brick building with no windows on the side facing her. She ran there and quickly skittered along its edge and made it to an alley and found a nook behind a blue metal dumpster. It stunk to high hell behind that dumpster, but she was completely hidden for that moment. She wanted to close the vents on her helmet, but she may have needed the air tank for some problems that might arise later, and she was on the clock. If the camera operators saw those soldiers on the ground in the bay, they'd set the dogs all throughout here. Even then, they'd be waking up again in about 10 minutes, and they'd surely know some stuff was going down. She took out her screen to remind herself where she was to place the beacon. It instructed her that there were utility antennas placed throughout the city that could wire the broadcast node to and hide it from view with just a few fast and simple connections. She hadn't noticed one of these antennas yet, but she was sure she'd find one soon. The brief said they were all over 10 meters high and were painted red. She inserted the screen back in her sheath and wanted to spit from the smell of the dumpster. She crept out to the edge and listened for anything in the vicinity or coming her way. It was fairly silent, but some of the silence was obstructed by the waterfall being so near. She peeked around the corner of the alley and carefully walked into the middle of the sidewalk of the nearest street that she guessed was east. She looked up and around for any antennas and could see none at first glance.